Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Disability Matters. I'm Morgan Spicer, Self-Advocate Coordinator with People First of West Virginia. I've learned over the years the importance of self-advocacy and how much of an impact it makes to have your story out there. Disability Matters is designed to cover a wide range of topics that will inform you, inspire you, and encourage you to strengthen your advocacy journey. Now, we'll do this by offering a variety of guests as well as interviews with advocates around the state. It's not just legislative advocacy, it's so much more. So this month, I got the chance to talk to Dr. Shawn Allen, Associate Professor of Social Work and Sociology at Concord University. Now, in case you don't know what that is, don't worry. Shawn will tell you what that is, as well as how he and his wife use their advocacy skills to care for their child with autism. Let's get to that interview now. So today I have Shawn Allen from Concord University, and he's here to talk to us about a little bit more about himself. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Morgan, I'd be glad to do that. So as you said, my name's Shawn, and I am an associate professor of social work here at Concord. I'm someone who primarily teaches in the MSW program here at Concord, which is fully online, by the way. If anybody out there's watching, looking to, go into social work and want to get a master's degree, we can certainly help you do that here at Concord from anywhere. But anyway, so that's kind of my day job and what I do. But also, Morgan, you and I met when I was out doing one of the presentations that I do, talking about ethical advocacy and some of those kind of things. So I do have a son who is 7 years old and is autistic. And so that's sort of, even though my background before coming into this was mostly working in the aging population with some disability services, but of course, like most of us, our personal lives end up starting to drive our professional lives a lot of the time. And so I have sort of the last 7 or 8 years sort of switched roles more into the disability advocacy more than ever before, because of the needs you see when it hits your personal life and hits you at home. But yeah, so that's kind of me.
Yeah, we met during the Mountain State Conference in, I get it wrong, Huntington?
It was in Morgantown.
Morgantown. I'm
Yeah.
horrible with day. So we met in Morgantown. I took your class on social ethics,
Yes.
and I really enjoyed that class. And then I was starting to do some research on you, and I thought, I think you would be great for this show because, you have a son that you do advocate for. So perfect opportunity.
Absolutely. I appreciate all that, Morgan.
Absolutely. So, you might have done this already, but explain the work that you do at the university.
Sure. So I'm a faculty member here in the social work program. As I mentioned, I primarily teach in our Master of Social Work program, but sometimes in our undergraduate program too. That's sort of I do all the things that you think of that a faculty member does, right? You teach, serve on committees, do research, all those sorts of things. I also have used my platform here to try to help others in the advocacy process, and through that, one of the things I do, of course, is working with students, right? And I try to make sure that the importance of advocacy and policy making and all that kind of stuff, how important that is for them as they move forward in their careers. I teach our advanced policy class for our MSW students, and that's one of the things we talk about. Like I require students to get out in the community and do something and see what's going on with their own eyes, as far as what learning about what advocacy efforts are going on, those kind of things. So that's part of what I do. Also in this role here, do a lot of grant writing, do a lot of class development. One of my goals I have right now for myself is I want to do a full class on like IDD, advocacy and history and that kind of stuff. It just hasn't came together yet because other things, how it is. You have this idea you want to do and other things pop up. But I do that. And then one of the things I do, that how we met, is I do a lot of workshops for social workers and other folks. And those workshops lots of times are based around social work ethics. And so I try to take that topic and and tailor it to different areas of practice. And the one you were in was the one where we talked about advocacy and social work ethics. We know that social workers are supposed to be, professional advocates. Really, is the if you ask what a social worker is, that's a big component of our job. So I try to show people how you can take, what we do as social workers and put it into, a wide variety of settings. And you don't have to be a social worker to use, these ideas and these techniques, or, and adhere to what is our code of ethics, which lends itself so much, to advocacy. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. Of course, I could go on and on, but we won't do that.
It's all right. So for any individuals that might not know what social work is, could you kind of explain what that is?
Absolutely. So, social workers, our role is to help, in a nutshell, if you ask me just to say in a few words, is to help vulnerable populations. Our when you look at our code of ethics, the very first sentence actually states that's our goal and what we do. So we are in all different facets of society. We work in lots of different places. I tell lots of people that if you line up 5 social workers and ask them all to explain their jobs, it'll sound like they're in 5 completely different fields or careers. But at the end of the day, the foundation of it is the same. We have like our values and what we're required to do and those sorts of things. So, and social workers work in everything from lots of people when they get an MSW, they work in clinical practice. Doing therapy and those kind of things. That was never for me. To this day, it's just not for me, right? I always liked better like policy and advocacy and those kind of things. And we work in all different, we work in schools, we work in nursing homes, we work in senior centers. That we get other advocacy agencies that provide services like IDD services. Lots of times, social workers may be case managers in those roles. So the breadth is very large. But at the end of the day, what we really do is we advocate for individuals who need it, for those who may be considered vulnerable or at risk, if you will, populations.
Awesome. And I want to go back to the fact when you mentioned about you have your students doing like the outside experience.
Yeah.
I think that's great that you do that because then they're learning about the impact that advocacy can have out in your community by just speaking up.
Absolutely. So one of the things to earn a social work degree, you have to do what's called, in a lot of places, it's called a field placement. Here we call it a practicum. And you actually go into an agency and you're there learning alongside other professionals, and you do that at the, it no matter if you're getting an MSW or a BSW, which is the Bachelor's of Social Work, you have to do that. And that's and we call that that's actually what's called the signature pedagogy of social work education, is that, you're out in the community doing things and learning how to do these things firsthand. I tell people lots of times that education is akin sometimes to think about driver's ed, right? You learn some really good foundational things from the book and in the class and do that, but it's not till you get out there on the road and put those things into practice before you're like, okay, now this makes sense. And that's how our education is too. When they go out to those agencies and do those things, that's when the rubber meets the road, so to say, right? And you have to put those things into practice, for sure.
Absolutely. So I understand that you are a member of the West Virginia Developmental Disability Council.
Sure.
Could you explain how that came to be and what it means to you?
Absolutely. So just real briefly for folks who may not know, that I joke the Developmental Disability Council that we call it the DD Council in the streets because that's what everybody seems to call us, the DD Council. But it is a group that was actually created in the 70s. So in 1970, the federal government passed something called the Developmental Disability Assistance and Bill of Rights Act. And one of those things, the things that bill did was say that every state had to have one of these DD councils. And the governor started ours in West Virginia in 1972. Of course, the DD Council does a lot of things as far as advocacy and promoting independence and doing some grant work and things like that. We don't lobby because we are a bipartisan, nonpartisan, I should say, group. But we do advocate, promote, and those kind of things. So Morgan, as far as me being involved with that group, I'll tell you what happens. Is you find out, like for me, I found out my son had special needs. He's level 3 autistic, and we live in southern West Virginia. If people can't tell by my accent, I grew up in McDowell County. And my wife and I figured out really quickly there was not a ton of resources in the region. So we're like, we've got to do what we can to advocate and help. Well, one of the things I knew I could do was join committees and groups and start trying to figure things out, networking that way. So I've joined, I've applied to and was accepted to the Olmsted Council. And then through that, I learned about the DD Council and was my application did as well, and was fortunate enough to be appointed by the governor last summer in July of 2024, I think it was. So it's an honor to get to sit at the table with these individuals. The group is made up of 60% is people who are appointed by the governor, if I'm not mistaken, from either people who are living with disabilities or family members, caregivers, those kind of things. And also we have a large group at the table as well of individuals from various agencies that we're required to have there as well. And so it's really, for me, it's really awesome to get to sit in the room with this great bunch of people and first of all learn about resources and learn that other people are having the same kind of experiences that I am, and learning where we need to advocate and actually doing that work. To anybody that's listening that is struggling like me and my wife were trying to figure things out. One of the things you need the most is you need that village around you. And you find different ways to do that. And for me, through the committee work, that's something that's helped me tremendously. From my wife, she's found all these other folks who are special needs parents in our county, right? And that sort of became her little village, and they rely on each other as well. So that's what it really means for me, is a sense of community. It gives me purpose and in a way to direct the work that I want to do to try to help people's lives, like my son, and to help families if I can.
And that's why I love People First. And People First is a program that's funded through the DD Council.
Yeah.
Katie Arbog that runs
Mhm.
that's on that DD Council. I graduated with her from Partners in Policymaking.
All right. Yeah.
So yeah, at first, I've known her for a while, so it's just great to see her stepping up in that role. But it's almost like with People First, like I tell a lot of people, it's almost like a family. Um, you meet these people that they're going through a lot of these issues in their communities and their personal lives, and through that you learn to fight with them. You make friends, you make those connections, and it's strengthening your advocacy skills.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've learned so much from, like you mentioned, Katie, a great person to get to know, Tina, who's the executive director of the DD
Yes.
Council, Carissa, who is our coordinator with Olmsted. I mean, all the members that I've gotten to know. And what's really interesting, Morgan, is through these groups and the people I've got to work with, I've reconnected with a lot of people I worked with years ago, right? And now we're all doing this thing now, and we're trying to work together. And absolutely, we have to learn from each other. As far as advocacy and skills, and I know there was a question about that. I mean, we have to take what we learn and help each other with those things. How many times do we? I might contact you and say, Morgan, I heard you knew something about X, Y, and Z. Can you help me? That kind of thing. And we do that. I sent an email to a colleague just yesterday saying, hey, I know of someone who's in need of this service, and I'm not totally sure about it. What do you think? That's one of the things we have to do, is lift each other up. And that goes far beyond just advocacy in the disability community, which is incredibly important. But that's kind of a cultural thing of what we do in rural America and in Appalachia, right? I mean, we have to find ways to support each other. And we see that in our communities every day. And so this is just our other little village, right, of people that we rely on and work with, and learn those things from and help each other. I mean, for me, I never have an issue if someone contacts me and says, hey, I'm in a situation and I'm trying to figure something out. You know anything about this? And it's like, if I don't, nine times out of 10, through these connections we make, we may know of someone else who does, right? And that's kind of how that works. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of those examples is one of our advocates wants to get involved more often and start meeting more people. And I actually got to refer him to a reference through what's called SARTAC. It's the Self Advocacy Resource and Technical Assistance Center.
Sure.
And they hold webinars every Thursday. And I
Cool.
told him that is a great place because a
Mhm.
lot of advocates from around this US join that. That would be, I mean, that's just an example of how he could get his story out there. I got
Mhm.
to help with that. And that's such a great feeling. You know, I feel great when I know I'm helping people.
Sure, absolutely. That's how we end up in these roles, right? You know,
Mhm.
so I remember. So here's kind of a funny story. Well, not funny, I guess, but I remember when I was really young, probably in like junior high, we had this group at school called Natural Helpers, and other people. How they did it was that they classmates voted on people. And it was like, you write down on a piece of paper who's someone you're talked to when you're, kind of needing help or that kind of thing. And so, anyway, long story short, I was elected one of those people. So I should have known then I was going to be a social worker, right? And I think about the other people who are in that group, and it's like, wow, they're all doing things that help people now. So it's in some ways, it starts with you very young, these things that we do. And I think there's certain folks that are just sort of geared towards some of that work. I really do now, but also those things can be learned too, and that's important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely learned with my other position that I'm part of, the customer service side of things, helping people. That I guess that's why I was so excited when the position was available. I thought I can do this.
that's right.
Yeah, and it's great to have advocates that know you and say, "Oh, I think that's great. More I know Morgan. We can get along pretty well."
Right. Exactly.
So, I understand you have a son who has a disability. Tell us how you use advocacy skills to make his life better every day.
Literally, my wife and I use them every single day. And first of all, let me say this. I think I told you all this in the workshop that we did. If I'm ever the advocate that my wife is, it would be a miracle. I may have degrees in this field and all those things, but you will never top a parent, particularly a mother, who is advocating for their child. It's just amazing to watch the things that she does. But we both have skills sort of in different areas, and we advocate and try to make change for him as much as we can. Like, I'll give you an example. He, again, I mentioned John's diagnosis is level 3 ASD. So that means he definitely needs some therapeutic kinds of things, right? And so finding ways to make that happen in an area where resources are a bit limited can be a challenge. And we have went through, first of all, if in the beginning, if my wife found out there was the inkling of services starting somewhere, there was actually an agency, she was in their door before they were open, and like saying, hey, what is this and when does this start, and I have to know, that kind of thing. So if a place where he used to get services for a while, they called John Patient Zero, because he was literally, when he was signed up before there was actually a list. um, so through the years, what we found is that, the advocacy never stops, because you'll have something going, and then you're like, wait a minute, there's a hiccup in the road, and we got to figure out something else now. So right now, actually, what my wife has done the lion's share of the work working out is there's an agency out of Central West Virginia that provides services, and they work with us via telehealth, and that's worked really well. That's one of the things we've learned, is advocating for, non-traditional types of services. And this is a place that didn't do this kind of thing. And we just kind of brought up to them, was like, hey, we made a friend there who's the owner. It's kind of like, hey, have you ever thought about this? And she was like, I think we can make that work. Now, is it ideal? No, but he's still getting a good share of services that he needs. We worked with the local hospital. Again, my wife did the lion's share of work of that in Princeton. They do not have necessarily right now a set therapy center for pediatrics. But she took John down, they met him, they're like, oh, we can work with him here. So John's in there and he does like his PT, OT, speech with other people, like in the room with him, which, is in a lot of ways that we've found through that system is good for him too, because he's getting a lot of socialization, right? But we advocated, particularly my wife, to make that happen. So it absolutely never stops. And then, Jamie always says, she doesn't mind doing the legwork. My role is to be out here finding out what else is available. Right, being on these committees and using the position I'm in to do those things. And so I can't tell you how many times I've been somewhere or brought back something and said, hey, do we know about this? And she's like, we're going to find out. And together we do that, right? And we send emails, make calls. It never stops. There's a group we're involved with here in Mercer County called the Special Needs Collaborative. That was started about a year and a half ago, I guess. And my wife, she is the event coordinator for it. And, they have put on several really great events that just sort of provide an atmosphere where special needs families can come out and, learn, see each other and socialize and learn about resources and all that sort of thing. So there's ways like that to make change. It's just, it's a lot of work though. And it never ends, and you sort of end up living this lifestyle. I feel like that my ears are always perked listening for something that might benefit my family or another family. That's another thing. I talk about we're of course all the things we do for John, our own son, but if we hear of things that help other people, we try to point them in that direction. Because what ends up happening, Morgan, and this is true, is when you're advocating and doing these things, other people come to you and say, hey, have you heard about anything for this or that? And you help, promote and move those things along too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I've been the self-advocate coordinator coming on 2 years. And, I tell people that I have really learned so much more than I learned before. I was originally a People First member for a good long time, and started at the ARC as the special events coordinator. And then I moved up, and I just learned. And I was just so shocked because all of the things that I didn't know, all the resources that I didn't know about, I'm learning these things. And I think that every day is a learning. You're advocating every day. It's an everyday thing.
Absolutely.
Whether, it's something so simple, or maybe a caretaker is helping you advocate. It's just an everyday thing. You just got to keep doing it, and it just comes like clockwork.
That's right. That's right. It never stops.
Mm-hmm. So, what does self-advocacy mean to you personally? And what are some examples of how you've used your voice to advocate for yourself or others?
So a lot of that kind of ties back to what we just talked about, right? Self-advocacy, I feel like it never stops. You're always trying to find that thing that you're in need of, and sometimes helping someone else too. One of the main things I think is, we talk about in social work, dignity and worth of the person. And a lot of that ties into this thing called strengths perspective, where we believe that everyone has strengths. And when you're self-advocating, you have to remember that you bring really valuable strengths to the table, and you are able to do this. And I think that's really important. Society spends so much time telling us what we can't do, right? Or what they view as limitations. But every single person, no matter who you are, no matter what abilities you feel like you have, you bring strengths and abilities to a table that are important. And I think that that's really key to this. Right now we hear some things in language going on that is just troubling. When it comes toward disability services and those sorts of things. Like I said, my son has autism. We know some of the things you hear right now, but those things just aren't accurate. Everyone is valuable to society. Everyone brings something to the table that's important. And it's important to advocate for yourself. If my wife and I don't advocate for our family, who's going to do it like we would, right? I mean, luckily we have tremendous friends, and we have people who will do a lot of things, but standing up for yourself is very important. And that's how we get to things that we want to get to, like equity, and inclusion, and true inclusion, not just saying like, hey, we believe in inclusion, but actually bringing everyone to a table and everyone has a voice. So that's important. And then as far as, the things I've done, I've talked a little bit about already, how we advocate for our son, how we, try to bring more services. How we work towards just lots of different things, and just even having those socialization kind of activities too. I remember the very first probably not the very first advocation, but one of the most tangible things I remember several years ago is there's a local pool. And Jamie, my wife, she stayed in contact with them and worked really hard to have them have sensory hours. And so I remember that first time we did that, we went and like it was an event like that, right? It was like, wow, together we really helped, make this happen. And the news came and put John on it, that kind of stuff. So I mean, there's lots of, so it can be anything like that to very serious services too. So yeah, the thing about it is it never stops, and we have to remember our strengths.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So if there was one thing you wish people without disabilities knew that would help people with disabilities, what would it be?
Kind of what we just talked about. Everyone has strengths, and having a disability, living with a disability, I should say, is not a tragedy. It may change the outlook of how things look at times, but it's not a tragedy. It can be beautiful, and and it's a natural part of human diversity at times. And with if I'm trying to think the way to say this, if I didn't know all the individuals I know who are living in these situations, my life wouldn't be as enriched as it is. I've learned so many just beautiful things from individuals around me who are living with disabilities. So it's like people treat folks like, oh my, it's not a I feel sorry for you kind of thing. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for that inclusion kind of thing. And that's where real progress can be made, because we're not, no one here is looking for someone to feel sorry for them and that kind of things. It's wanting to be heard and to be understood just like anyone is. And understanding the value that these voices bring to the table. My son, there's a lot of value in how he views things. Now, and he's nonverbal, so sometimes it's challenging for him to get out how that is. But my wife always says, I wish I could see things through his eyes, because the way he views the world, the things he thinks are funny, all that kind of stuff. It's really great. And just that's the thing for me, Morgan, is the understanding that living with a disability is not a tragedy. But now, but also as society, we should be helping advocate. It shouldn't just take self-advocacy. We shouldn't wait until something hits our doorstep to decide it's time to do something. Now, I totally understand, like families like mine, right? Now, I was always an advocate in disabilities and some of the work that I did, but of course it really upped a bit when, my son's situation came along, and that's fine. But understanding that, these things should matter to us, because we should be advocating for services and helping share the voice of our neighbors. And I could go on and on, but understanding those strengths and how that this is not, like, disabilities is not a tragedy. That's not what it is.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we teach a lot in People First as well, is that you are an individual first and your disability comes second. And you want to be seen in the world as an individual that's amazing. You have these talents and skills, like you said, what you bring to the table. And, that's what people should see about you. Not that you have like Down syndrome or something like that. You're an amazing individual, celebrate that.
That's right. That's right.
So I know we've gone through a lot, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just real briefly, like we just mentioned, advocacy is everyone's role. Not just one person. It takes all of us to support each other. and you know, and work together. So that's really important. And I just hope that, you know, as we have these conversations, as we hear the stories of people who have been through challenges, that something might be encouraging. You know, if you're someone who's listening who, you know, is going through a tough situation right now, trying to figure out where resources are, just making heads or tails of things, you know, reach out. That's what we're all here for, is to help each other. And I guarantee you, wherever you are, we can find someone that can be a resource for you. So yeah, and Morgan, I just really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you so much, Shawn, for joining us today. Remember, if you'd like to share your self-advocacy story or have a topic you would like covered on a future episode, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can call me at 304-422-3151 extension 129, or you can email me at morgan.spicer@thearcmov.org. With that, we're out of time for this month's episode. Join us next time for another episode of Disability Matters, where we are advocating, educating, and celebrating the potential within you. See you next time, and have a great Thanksgiving holiday.